books are two entirely different things, and in a very sort of fundamental way, an adaptation can never be true to the original because it is a different medium.
Time to enter our literary salon. Previous Man Booker Prize winner Julian Barnes has said his latest book, Departures, is going to be his last. Let's talk about this with Alex Clark, literary journalist, host of the TLS podcast. She has just reviewed it. You've described it, Alex, and a very good afternoon from the both of us, as a slippery affair. What does that mean?
Well, I guess Julian Barnes is kind of partly known for hopping between the genre. He goes from fiction to non-fiction, little bits of autobiography. He throws in a lot of literary history. He writes straightforward non-fiction sometimes, as in his book, The Man with the Red Coat. So he's kind of mixed all that up in one book, not for the first time, but as he tells us, with an apparently entirely straight nib, it is for the last. This is going to be his last book.
And is that mammoth news in the literary world?
I think it is, but then, I've been reading his books for years and years and years. I remember first reading Flaubert's Parrot when I was at school, so you can see what kind of unbearable popularity queen I was. I was already on that kind of tip when I was a teenager. So, he's been around for a long time, and he's written a very wide range of books. It's, latterly we've seen him writing these quite concise novels about characters like The Sense of an Ending, for example, or The Only Story. These characters who go back over their past and find that it's not as they thought it was, that the story wasn't really quite what they imagined it to be. But he's also written a novel about Shostakovich in the last few years. He's written all sorts of things, written lots and lots of essays. He wrote a novel imagining an episode in the life of Arthur Conan Doyle some years ago. So he's an incredibly versatile writer. And I think for that, and for the sort of longevity of trying to do different things while recognisably having Julian Barnes's voice. Yeah, I think it is big news.
What's his biggest hit?
Oh, that's a very good question. I suppose The Sense of an Ending was filmed not very long ago. I think it's hard to talk about him without going back to some of those early works like Flaubert's Parrot, which was shortlisted for the Booker Prize, and in fact lost to Anita Bruckner's Hôtel du Lac, a book we're all still reading.
Okay.
I think I must know the teacher, right? You never forget anything, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think you're having the last laugh, by the way, Alex, in terms of, maybe at school I'm sensing slightly kind of set apart by your literary passions, and now you're earning money from it. So where are those people?
You say I was chief librarian.
Okay. Well.
And I went out with the chess captain.
Okay, I take it back.
Do you know what I mean? It wasn't. People
wasn't just one thing, was it, Alex?
No, people
we're building up a
weren't
picture
coming
here.
to me for fashion tips and to know how to comport themselves at the disco. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, but you know how to use the word comport. So again, I think you've had the last
yeah, I've
laugh.
got the last laugh.
Yeah.
You're so right.
The Oscar buzz is building for Hamnet, isn't it? Which is the film adaptation of Maggie O'Farrell's novel. I wonder what you've made of it. And a lot of people, when a novel goes to be a film, Alex, say, is it true to the book? But actually, does it matter if a film is true to the book? Isn't it meant to be a bit different?
I think films and books are two entirely different things, and in a very sort of fundamental way, an adaptation can never be true to the original because it is a different medium. And if it's a sort of laboured, a frame by frame reenactment of a paragraph or a chapter, then it's usually lifeless, isn't it? And so I think that they have got to have their own life. What you're talking about is a kind of fidelity to the spirit of something, to the intention of something. If you entirely transform it, then yes, you are left thinking, well, why didn't you just write your own story? It has to have something of that. And in this case, I guess what really got people about Hamnet was that sense of the private, emotional, concentrated lives of people we think we know, that we know of, but this untold story of a personal tragedy.
Yeah. Do you know what I really loved was the fact in both the book and the film, but in very different ways, it really stays with the complete mystery of grief, which I think maternal grief and paternal grief, losing a child, can sometimes be a mystery for an entire life. Of course it is, because, you can't explain that loss and that sadness. But for a film and a book to just stay with that thing, I think that's the bit that connects the two genres for me. And in different ways, they're both done very well. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And that's the point exactly about adaptation, isn't it? You have to have that connection. It can be a kind of filament connection, but it's got to be an unbreakable one. There has got to be something that carries over from one piece of art to the other. And I think you're right about Hamnet. There is a solid kernel of intention, and that's what gets carried over. Yeah.
For people who go to the cinema and think, oh, I really want to read more Maggie O'Farrell, it is worth saying that her books are so diverse in their topics, aren't they? So if you're thinking that she writes period drama, she doesn't. She writes all kinds of stuff.
All sorts of things. So I picked out a couple, and I thought, this is staying with period drama, but it's very different. The book that she wrote after Hamnet, The Marriage Portrait, that came out of 3 or 4 years ago, which is it's both a sort of literary history in a way, because it takes a Renaissance woman, a noble woman who dies very young and probably under nefarious circumstances, who appeared in a poem called My Last Duchess by Robert Browning, and it kind of brings her to life again. And it is about essentially women who were sold, very, very essentially sold, power brokered, marriage brokered, very, very young, and how they can endure through art over decades and centuries. But it's a very compelling novel. And then I also thought, if you wanted to read again, this is about endurance through very difficult circumstances. She also wrote a memoir called I Am, 17 Brushes with Death, which is about her own experiences of frailty and illness and those of her family. But it's very compelling.
Yeah. If you just want to read some of her cracking stories, I think she's just a great, great storyteller.
She is.
I would recommend her first one, After You're Gone, which is about kind of 20-something, late 20-something love, set in London, absolutely brilliant, and Instructions for a Heat Wave, which does what it says on the tin, and it is set in that 1970s heat wave, isn't it, with the melting pavements. Again, I think of North London. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong about the postcode, but they're just brilliant, brilliant modern novels, and I think...
Yeah. You're right.
What would you recommend? Sorry, Alex, I'll come back.
The autobiographical one about the encounters with near misses,
which
is
death. I am.
I found that actually quite disturbing, because there's a really, I'm sure you remember this, Alex, the encounter that the young Maggie had with Jimmy Savile. Do you remember that bit?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that sense also of just looking back on a past and seeing it come into a kind of some focus that you couldn't possibly have thought of at the time.
Yeah.
And realising that your life again is a kind of kaleidoscope, isn't it?
Are you one of those people, Alex, who was a bit underwhelmed by the film? As I confess I was, and I feel almost embarrassed to say it.
I really enjoyed it, but I am not a weeper at films.
No.
And I think if I'm not...
Well, he went out with the chess captain, so, you don't sound like a weeper.
Do you know what I mean? I don't always like to feel things in front of screens. So I think, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well,
I think I'm much more likely to cry at kind of a dog having a sore paw than a really clearly, obviously, emotional situation. I'm much more likely to react to that imprint. That's a kind of personal horses for courses, I suppose. But I do know what you mean. I thought, the acting was magnificent, and I'm sure it will get a lot of plaudits, and it looked very, very beautiful, didn't it?
Yes. I think I just thought I'd like it more. Anyway, Fiona.
Yes, I know. But that is one of the problems, isn't it?
Yeah.
When we think we're going to like something more than we eventually.
Well, this, by the way, has been discussed on off air with Jane and Fiona.
Yeah.
I think it was last week, though.
And also just nothing is ever going to take away from me the greatness of Maggie O'Farrell's writing. So I almost find all the Hamnet film stuff at the moment just a bit of a distraction. I don't mind if, something tips up on daytime Channel 5, that's an adaptation of her book, as long as people are still reading the books. I think that's all that matters.
Yes, I know what you mean exactly, and there are many to choose from. One of the others that I had picked up was The Vanishing Act of Esme Lennox. I think it's a really great book. So.
Yeah, I mean, just the title, Alex, is amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Very quick word about something you wanted to recommend for any budding writer.
Yes.
What a great idea, actually, because lots of people, they turn over a new leaf in the new year and they say, OK, this is the year that I'm going to write something. So what should they read?
So there is a new book out by Elizabeth McCracken, a novelist and short story writer, American. It's called A Long Game, Notes on Writing Fiction. She has played a long game. She's taught it as well. But it is basically do not listen to any of the previous guides kind of territory. Don't worry if people say write every day, but you don't write every day. She says writers essentially write every day. She does anyway, because she harnesses the power of her own self-loathing. And that's the kind of tenor of the book. It's saying, fine, you can read, you can tape up all these notes saying, write what you know, show, don't tell, here's how to tell a third person, but that do not follow the rules, because that is not how to become a writer. So do not be hard on yourself.
OK, that sounds really good. So that is Elizabeth McCracken's A Long Game.
A Long Game. And worth mentioning that she and Anne Patchett, who I bet we all have read and enjoyed, Anne Patchett is the only person Anne Patchett shows her manuscripts in progress to. So look, she must be getting something right.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you very much indeed, Alex. It's always lovely to talk to you. Alex Clark, you can find as the host of the TLS podcast. We were also talking about Julian Barnes' last book, Departures. We were talking about all of Maggie O'Farrell's novels. Yeah. I would honestly start with the first one, and if you like it, you're laughing. You've got 8 others to come.